Hey there, it's Christian from 7 Gaming Network, and I'm here with a video which I'm actually really quite excited about. This is a new deck tech on a deck that I've been working on. I'll tell you straight up now, it's currently 12-0, and I had tested some iterations that I made of this before, and they were also really good as well. So this is a list that's had a few tweaks and it's built to this, and this current list is looking really strong. Okay, so the video is going to run quite long because I'm going to try and sort of leave more or less no stone unturned. I'm sure there'll be something I'll miss, but there's going to be a lot of information in this. So you might want to sit down and do it over a couple of sittings, but there's a lot to look at here. So I'm sat at the computer, I've got Tabletop Simulator out in front, and that's what we're going to use to go through this deck. So as you can see, you can see what characters are in it. I've called this deck the Shooting Sisters because well, I've long been wanting to make a really competitive deck, tournament-wise, using nightsisters. I think they're criminally underrated. You may know of my sister sledge deck, which paired two of them with Kylo, which was fine early days, but since the game has sort of progressed a little bit, I've been convinced I could put somebody better with these two nightsisters and get a really strong team. Now I actually did Jabba the Hutt with these two quite a while ago and did like a heavy discard sort of deck. It wasn't quite there, wasn't quite competitive enough, but just bear in mind that milling your opponent out is a very genuine secondary strategy with this deck, especially if the game goes long. Right, I want to talk about these three then, because this is a really exciting team, I believe. Now, one of the defining features about why they're so good is re-rolls. Now, just as a heads up, this is a control deck, and I've wanted to make a control deck that is really competitive for quite a while. I don't think really outside Jabba Dooku we've really seen many lists that are, and I believe this is a good tier 2. I don't think it may well be tier 1. I don't think it is tier 1. Maybe in the hands of a better player than myself it could be, but I have been continually astonished at how much control the deck has, mitigation and manipulation, and actually how much damage it can put out, which I wouldn't have expected out of the nightsisters. But I'm going to go into more detail on that, because first of all I want to give you a heads up on what the overall strategy is, and then we'll look at how these two characters are fitting into it. Now the strategy is really quite simple. It's really to let our opponent essentially use themselves up. They're going to spend their turn rolling their characters out, playing their cards, and our role with this deck is to mitigate and manipulate until they've rolled all their characters out and they don't really have a lot else to do in the turn. At that point then, we may well have used Jabba in the turn, but generally then it's the turn of the nightsisters to go, and these nightsisters will try and dish out a bunch of damage. Now that's really how it breaks down, and the deck is surprisingly good at doing this. As I said, it's 12-0. I've played against pretty much all the big decks in the meta, from Django, Balatik and Stormtrooper, to Django 2 Stormtroopers, to Jabba Dooku, to Jabba Vader, to Leia Akbar, Han Rey, like all of these decks, and I've managed to win against all of them. So let's have a look at these characters and how they're fitting into our strategy. So first of all, the big thing about nightsisters is this ability. That ability, that action to re-roll a die, it is brokenly good. It's absolutely brilliant, and it really has only one drawback, in that it's potentially a bit slow if your opponent's rolled out lots of dice, but quite frankly, all the times that it's really strong, I mean, it's scary. It's frustrating as anything to play against, because our opponent can work really hard to get themselves some good dice results, and we just roll it away. Now, if we've got shields on the sisters, and we've got quite a few ways of getting shields on them in this deck, then it almost feels like you're just getting free rerolls, which is ridiculously good when it's on a stick. You just have it whenever we want to. Their ability in this deck is really strong, and it defines the deck. The whole way, the majority of the way that we do our mitigation and manipulation is reroll, reroll, reroll. Oh, that's a nice roll. I'll make you reroll it. Now this has huge impact, especially when you consider that Jabba himself also is essentially a reroll ability. Now, of course, we can use it offensively, in a sense that we can try and get a better result out of Jabba with his reroll, with his dice. But I think about most of the games that you've played recently, and I would say they've had yellow in them. Certainly in the 12 games that I've played with this deck, I think there's been only 3 that didn't have yellow in, and that was against 2 games against Leia Akbar and 1 game against Luke Akbar. So, I mean, there's just a lot of yellow out there. So you can time Jabba's activation until after their yellow character's gone, or character with yellow dice is gone, and then re-roll those dice. So we've got masses of reroll in the deck, and it's brilliant at mitigating. Reroll is also really, really strong in Destiny, because we can use it to essentially counteract the focus that our opponent has. So I mentioned Akbar there, and quite a few decks are running him because he's a really strong character. Well, what I'm tending to find is that it makes people feel like it's a bit pointless having Akbar and being able to use him, because they are using up a die to get some focus, and then just re-rolling the die that they focused. So their ability kind of counteracts your opponent utilizing focus much in their strategy, and there's quite a lot of focus in our deck that we can get our dice to what we want, but of course we can use the Night Sisters to do that as well. It's not just re-rolling our opponent's die, we can re-roll our own. So they mitigate damage, and they help us to potentially maximize our own and smooth out. Now you could say, well, they take damage to do that, okay, but of course we've got ways of controlling and mitigating that too with applying shields. Now Jabba is obviously a very strong character. We're using his elite version here. What I really like about the combination that we've got here is that these 2 Night Sisters, well, they only have 2 damage sides, but they've got a 1 and a 2 straight up, so that's really good. And then all the focus that Jabba brings to the table, I mean, we've got 2 dice and 2 sides of each as focus, so it's very easy for us to use Jabba's die sides. If he doesn't roll his disrupt early, because we've used him early and disrupted their resources, if he doesn't end up using his discard, which is great, because remember, if we're discarding opponents' cards, that is in many ways often mitigating damage, because they can't then discard to reroll. So and then of course we've got his focus sides, and if we get his focus sides, great, we're happy to keep those for the Night Sisters to enable the modifiers, which I'll talk about, that we've got the modded damage in this, because this deck puts out a surprising amount of damage. Now then, each of our characters can roll resources. Our deck loves resources. We've got loads of ways of using it. We're a control deck, that's fairly standard, but actually it can run on not many resources as well. It's amazingly flexible. I have been consistently amazed at how well this deck performs. We have a massive number of options, and therein actually lies one of the difficulties of playing with a team like this, with the colours that we're in, with all the control cards that we have available. Villain blue, yellow, Force Rogue is essentially the best control selection of cards that we have at the moment, but it gives you lots of options, and it can make it a bit of a head scratcher sometimes to play with. So the first 5 or 6 games I was just getting my head around, wow, I've got so many options here of how to move forward and be in control of this game. So it's a lot of fun, and it feels very, very powerful, but also it can be a little overwhelming. So if you're a newer player, this might take some working up to get your heads around some other big sort of Destiny principles. So the reroll is one of the main features of this deck, and it's very frustrating to play against, and it's brilliant for mitigating damage as well as maximising our own. And this deck, for a control deck, isn't looking to mill out, remember. It can do, but it wants to kill off our opponent's characters, and it does so actually pretty ruthlessly. Okay, so I also think as well, when there's quite a lot of decks that have big characters in at the moment. You know, I think a lot of decks have got Luke in, they've got Vader in, and I think there's just an extra point to make about Nightsisters being really strong against those kind of decks. If those decks have big dice in, Nightsisters, they go from being completely awesome to being, oh my goodness, why am I playing this list against them? Another thing I want to say about this team before we move on is the health. Well, they've got quite a lot of basic health here across three of them. There's 25. Now, very often, because of the Nightsisters' ability, we're more than likely, I'll let him sneak peek here, our battlefield is Mos Eisley Spaceport. Now, we can take advantage of that with this deck list, but actually most of the time what we're going to want to do is take 2 shields and stick 1 on each of the Nightsisters. That's giving our team 27 health potentially. Yes, we may end up using those shields up with their reroll, but this is a lot of grind. We've got a lot of damage mitigation, and 25 basic health is a great deal. And with the amount of shields that this deck does have in it, and it may be using them up, but it's putting more on. I mean, your opponent is going to be doing in excess of 30 damage easily to win this game. I really feel like that's what I'm seeing when I'm playing with it, that people are generally having to do 30 plus damage to it, and you're against a deck that's doing masses of rerolls and loads of control. Keeping these characters alive is really not hard. In fact, in the last 12 games that I've had with this list, nobody has killed more than 1 character. So even a 3 character list where, you know, characters like Balatik become quite threatening, they may get that 1 activation, and that's about it, because Jabba is hard work to take down, and if you're going to beat this deck, you need to take Jabba down first, really. Okay, so enough about the characters themselves. Let's have a look at some of the other cards in here. Now, it's called Shooting Sisters, and so I want to go through the damage cards first. Now, and these are the main ones. Now, you may be thinking, hang on, there's only 5. Yeah, but games with this aren't short. Most of the games that I've gone with this have been 25 to 30 minutes to get the win, okay? And if they go to time, there's so much control in this that generally we've mitigated lots of damage and got quite a bit out. So we're ahead in that as well. So tournament-wise, which is what I was building this deck for, in my testing it's been solid so far. Now we've got Mind Probe in. I mean, we're playing blue. Obviously then we're playing Sith Holocron, so Mind Probe is a no-brainer. In this deck, it's dealing range damage. It's got a 3 for 1. We've got some modifiers, so it helps to enable that. Resources aren't too much of a problem. It's got a 2 disrupt and it's got a 2 discard. It's very similar to Jabba. It's very similar to these Nightsisters look. I mean, they've got disrupt, discard, resource. Jabba is disrupt, discard, resource. So there's a lot of similar theme here. It's just that he's got the focus, they're the ones putting out the damage, okay, or enabling the damage. So Mind Probe just helps us with that, and of course it's got the 2 stupid specials, which you know, if you're rolling this at the start of your turn, it's happy days. You're going to get serious value out of this, especially when you can potentially get it in for free. Now, Jetpack. And Hold Up Blaster. Let me talk about Jetpack first, because Jetpack is probably the standout card in this. Hold Up Blaster is so good as well. They're both brilliant, but for different reasons. Now, Jetpack. So it's got a +2 and it's got its +3 sides on. Now, normally in decks that use Jetpack, people can struggle with just not seeing those modified sides. It can be very frustrating because these other sides in a sort of an aggro-y, do lots of damage deck, you don't really want to see. However, we got lots of ways of making sure we get a +2 and a +3 off, because we've got Jabba with focus on. We've got Jabba's reroll ability. You can reroll the yellow dice, so you can stick Jetpack out on one of the girls, activate them, and then use Jabba later in the turn to reroll your Jetpack die. And we've got built-in rerolls on the Nightsisters. Now, you don't want to go crazy and use up 3 shields or something, or put 2 damage on a Nightsister just trying to get this out, unless you're really pushing for that last bit of damage. But we've got the option there. That's the big thing. And of course, Jabba isn't the only focus we got in this deck, with Sith Holocron around and others. So in my testing, what's been consistently the case is that I can get at least one of the girls onto their 1 or 2 damage side probably, and then I can get the jetpack on a +2 or +3. And if at the end of every round, at a bare minimum, I'm doing, well, maybe 4 from the 2 girls, or I'm doing 5 from a jetpack and one of the Night Sisters, like in a deck where I'm mitigating pretty much all the incoming damage and I'm dishing out 4 or 5 at the end of every round, happy days, that really starts to build up. But of course, it's not just that. We can get a lot more, because we can have 2 jetpacks in. We can have a jetpack going off with 2 Night Sisters. That frequently happens. The +3 side on the jetpack, plus the 2 2s from the Night Sisters. That's 7 damage. That's ridiculous. It's at the end of the round when they've used all their stuff up and they can't do anything else. Another thing I'll point out as well is this action on these Night Sisters, it delays the turn. So it's great. You're just doing these re-rolls and they're just too busy rolling out all their cards and finishing their turn really quickly. Now then, Holdout Blaster and how that... Oh, I haven't finished talking about Jetpack yet. Okay, so it's got the Disrupt side on, which is actually probably the side we want to see least, because we've got lots of other ways of disrupting. But that 2 shield side, I mean, a lot of the time that'll just be hallelujah when we see that, because we can take those 2 shields, and that with the Night Sisters ability is 2 free rerolls. Okay, it costs us our jetpack die, but we don't mind that. Those 2 shields really fit beautifully into this deck. And actually the special isn't always going to be the end of the world. If we get to the end of the turn and we haven't quite managed to perhaps use up get the modified sides, well, taking a shield off the jetpack die because we haven't been able to do anything else with it is still happy days. We love those shields. It's more mitigation. We don't mind it going a bit longer. So even then, and of course, it's remove a die if it's a melee damage die. So we can use it earlier in the turn and really take advantage of if we're going up against, you know, Vader, or we're going up against Kylo Dooku and those kind of decks, which we see a bit less of in the meta, of course, but it's a really helpful little bit of extra control against those melee. Now then, so this is just a simply fantastic card in this deck for us, mainly for the damage it's outputting, but because there's some of the good things too. Now, Holdout Blaster, let's have a look at this bad boy. So we know it's a great weapon anyway. One thing that is very nice about the ambush is the fact that we can also do some mitigation and play out our Holdout Blaster. We could do our Holdout Blaster and roll our character, which can be really great if it's, say, Jabba. That works really nicely on Jabba. They're normally primarying Jabba, so we quite like putting the Holdout Blaster on Jabba because, of course, it's got the redeploy, so that works really nicely. And if there's one of these characters that we tend to want to use earlier in the turn, it's going to be Jabba, because if it rolls those discard sides or those disrupt sides, we can really take advantage of those and pressure our opponents, get rid of cards from their hands, and we can lose their resources and so on. So an early play of Holdout Blaster onto Jabba and putting that pressure early in the turn can work very nicely. But look, it's got the +2 modded side. Lovely. We know we can enable that because we've got those Night Sisters and all the focus. We've got a 2 for 1, and we've got the 1. So the damage is great, but the difficulty with Holdout Blaster is normally it's only 50% of the sides that we're interested in our decks. and an aggro deck that sees the shield or the resource is normally a bit, that I don't want that out of my blaster. We really don't mind that in this deck. We love resources. It allows us to get more upgrades out. We've got lots of upgrades in the deck. It allows us to play more control and to mitigate more damage or to maximize our own damage. And also the shield, of course, is further refueling our, it's being defensive, and it gives us the option of re-rolling a die, either our own and maximizing damage, or the options are huge. So Holdout Blaster becomes this incredible card for us because for 2 we get in this ambushing extra action, redeploying a piece of equipment that we are happy if we see any of the 5 sides on. And it's easy for us to manipulate it to get it to the damage side the vast majority of turns that we play it. So these 3 are really the main ways that we're going to be dishing out damage, and I mean, it has to be seen to be believed. I really have been amazed at what 2 Night Sisters with 1 jetpack between them can do on a consistent basis. It's a bit obscene. Okay, so let's have a look at, I've included on the hunt, and I've sort of staggered them a little bit with the more defensive upgrades and control upgrades that we have in the deck because of that special. But let's have a look at it. I mean, it's one, and we've only got one copy in here. You probably could play two. There's some cards you could play around with, but this special is so brokenly good. Now, of course, in our deck, what we love to see is anything that is going to remove shields. It's essentially read damage. You know, if they've got 3 shields and we remove all their shields, we've just done 3 damage to them. If we then, it's the fact that it's dealing damage, which is what we want our sisters to do, and we can pay a resource to remove one of the character or upgrade dice. I mean, it couldn't fit any better into our control strategy, because it's giving us the control as well as dishing out the damage that we really want to have. And the majority of decks that I'm playing against use shields. You know, if it's if it's Duggins everywhere, or it's Hero Blue, or it's Padme Mill. We're seeing shields consistently. But the only decks that aren't using a lot of shields really is the sort of Sith decks. So this is a brilliant card in most matchups, and of course, at the very least, it ends up being a 1 ramp up into our more expensive abilities. So let's have a look at these defensive abilities then, because I think I've made the case that it's very easy for us, with even just 1 upgrade, to be putting out 6 to 7 damage on a turn. Now, this is such an amazing suite of defensive cards. Now, Immobilize, normally in a Sith deck, you're sort of like, yeah, the shields are okay, but I don't really want to take those. Shields with Night Sisters, I'm going to mention it each time, it's ridiculously good. It gives us all the options for improving our own damage or negating our opponent's damage. So that all the shield sides on this are lovely. That 1 disrupt isn't ideal, but it's also got the resource. We don't mind taking the resource, and we always have the option, of course, for turning our opponent's dice to a blank. So a very consistent way then of blanking the damage or negating the incoming damage. So Immobilize is fantastic, and then Force Choke, we know again, is another great card. It's got discard, it's got disrupt, it's fitting into our control strategy, it's got the resource, so we're happy with that. But then these 2 specials, the specials are so good. So it's dealing more damage, and it's blanking out more dice. Now, Immobilize and Force Choke together, of course, as well, can also pave the way for us to play a nice big Feel Your Anger, which is an event we'll come on to in a minute, but is a very powerful way of controlling the game. So these 2 together are great, but what I'm going to say is every opportunity you get, if you get a Force Throw in, you're going to upgrade your Force Throw over these, unless you've got a Sith Holocron that's potentially going to go off. I probably wouldn't use it, and I'd try and get the roll on the Holocron. Again, with the Holocron, we've got focus in this deck, quite a lot of focus. So we can often, more often than not, we're going to get our special side off on the Holocron and get in free Force Throws. I'm not going to go for Force Throw because we know how brilliant it is. It's also got ranged damage on, so extra bonus when we're running things like Jetpack and Hold Out Blaster in a pinch. Maybe our Night Sister dice have been, I don't know, isolated away, or he doesn't like you or something. Now, Hunker Down, of course, in this deck, again, is just stupid good. It's free shields, it's slowing the game down, it's stalling when we're playing in this against Django, in this sort of Django heavy meta. The only time, of course, it becomes not really so good is against melee decks, if we're playing Jabba Dooku, but very often we can put the 1 shield on and we'll be taking that 1 damage side result from them. Against Vader, it's a bit poo, and that might just become a discard to reroll, which we do sometimes use, of course, with this deck. Now, the last 2 that we've got in here are, and I'll just mention with Hunker Down, we can use it in conjunction with the battlefield if we just so happen to end up getting the chance to take the battlefield to get an extra resource. Now, Sith Holocron, point applies there as well because it's a 0 cost item. But we know it's brilliant. You're going to use it to get in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 brilliant upgrades if we can. But and you might say, well, I'd kind of want more if I'm going to run Sith Holocron. Where's my Force Training or something? Well, yeah, we don't mind +1 resource. We don't mind taking the resources from it, and we certainly don't mind that focus. We love that focus because the sisters are going to take advantage of it. Maybe Jabba's going to take advantage of it and discard some cards away, or we're going to use it to get multiple specials off. We might want to get the On the Hunt on the go. We might all sorts of things. Okay, so that focus is very valuable in this deck. then we've got Cunning. Now I would love 2 copies of this. I really would love 2 copies of this. The difficulty is that we are running only 1 yellow character. We're running Jabba now. Admittedly, it's hard to get rid of. And if you can get 2 Cunnings early with your force throw in or your force choke in or something else brilliant like that, then Cunning is off the scale good. Most of the time, I try and use Cunning as like an extra force throw. It feels like I've got another force throw dice on the table. Especially as I know it's only got 1 special, but with all the focus that we're running, we can generally get it to its special. It's got focus itself, so it's brilliant for enabling our damage again. And those other 3 sides again, they're all great control sides: the disrupt, the discard, and the resources. So many of the, and you may have seen this as a common theme, so many of the dice faces that we're seeing, we're just happy. Like, we can use all of them, and that's one of the brilliant things about this deck. There are very few like bad rolls. Often it feels like, oh, I can do this, I can do that, I can go lots of different ways, like a good control deck should do. Backup Muscle, I mean, it's a top 10 card. There's no reason why we wouldn't be playing it in this. We're looking to dish out damage. It's a brilliant finisher. There are many occasions when the Nightsisters will deal 6 or 7 damage. They push Django to close to the edge. They push a Balatik to nearly dead. A Stormtrooper's nearly dead. We can start the next turn and fire up that Backup Muscle as our first action and finish off a character. It's just brilliant every time, and that's why we've got 2 of them in there. Now, when it comes to our event suite, so many good cards. Now, I've put Intimidate in because Intimidate essentially reads deal 2 damage or deal 3 damage for free. I mean, we're going to use it on a character when they've got 2 or 3 shields on. So, and if you printed a card that said deal 2 or 3 damage straight out of hand for 0, I mean, that's going to go in just about every deck. So in a meta that's got lots of shields around, Intimidate's a bit of a no-brainer. Now you could have 2 in here, absolutely, and in fact, one of the very minor tweaks that I have done is like 2 Intimidates and losing on the hunt, and on the hunting, or go 2 on the hunts and no Intimidates. You could play around with that, and there are a couple of other slots as well that we can also mess about with. But Intimidate in this deck is so fast, and that's what I really like. On the hunt could be a bit slower to roll out, to resolve. It's a couple of actions. You want a resource to get the most out of it. Intimidate is just bang, and a lovely play is. They take your battlefield, they take 2 shields, thinking they're sort of denying you a little bit, and then you hit the big Intimidate. So now the rest of these cards, they're all just so good. This is where we're really looking at the mitigation side of things. So we've got a Deflect. Obviously there's still lots of range in the meta, so it's always a brilliant card, and it's going to do us some damage as well. Use the Force is one that we can use offensively, defensively. Spot a blue character, I don't mind these spot a blue characters in, because if anybody goes after the 2 Nightsisters and manages to kill the 2 Nightsisters with just Jabba alive, like I've probably lost, well actually I probably haven't lost that game, but that's just hard work. I mean, to kill off the 14 points worth of Nightsisters before the 11 health worth of Jabba, and it's just the wrong way to go about it. So that's why I don't mind having spot blue character cards in over and above spot a yellow character, which is why I haven't got Electroshock in this deck, because they should be going after Jabba first. So Use the Force is great both offensively and defensively in this deck. And Unpredictable gets stupid good in this deck. Like I said earlier on, one of the drawbacks of the Nightsisters is it could potentially be a bit slow, only re-rolling the 1 dice if our opponents rolled out 4, got a bit of a god roll on Han or something like that, and they've got 4 damage dice out. Well, Unpredictable allows us to double the number of dice that we can re-roll in a turn. We re-roll it with Unpredictable itself, and then we can do the action with our Nightsister. So that can be really strong, feels great. Unpredictable just works so well in this deck, because it means that we could Unpredictable and then play a dodge, or we could Unpredictable, oh it's a blank, great, now I can play Feel Your Anger on 2 dice. There's loads of different ways. We can Unpredictable, though it's still rolled ranged, okay, I'll deflect it. There's loads of different ways in which we can use Unpredictable. It's a brilliant card. Now, He Doesn't Like You, I'm down to 1 copy in the deck with He Doesn't Like You, because one of the things, of course, that we're trying to do in our strategy is to get our opponent to roll all their dice out first. And often the character that we're going to roll out earlier in the turn is going to be Jabba, and I don't very often want to be discarding Jabba's dice for he doesn't like you. Like, his dice are too good. I mean, I'll do it if I need to get rid of a Vader die or something like that that's on 3. But generally, that's why I've only got 1 in there, because often I'm seeing it in my hand and I'm thinking I don't want to roll my characters out, or it's just a bit slow. If we're not normally having the battlefield with this deck, and because we haven't got the battlefield, we don't want to rely on he doesn't like you as our removal. However, Feel Your Anger, we're quite happy with that. Okay, occasionally they just roll out and they don't hit any blanks, but very often if your opponent's rolling 4 or 5 dice, they frequently roll 1, and of course it always has that option to just completely blow our opponent out with that. They can roll 3 blanks or something. Of course, bearing in mind that we've also got Force Choke, that blanks a dice out. We've got Immobilize, that blanks dice out, and that we could force some re-rolls to take their dice 2 blanks. And as I said, there's also that synergy with something like Unpredictable. Feel Your Anger can very often hit 2 dice, and I'm paying 1 resource to remove 2 dice and leave them with 2 blanks. You've kind of dealt with 4 dice there. That's really strong, and that's why it's in here, because it's such good mitigation. Now, we've got 1 copy of Dodge in there, and why I've got that 1 copy of Dodge in is that one of the Achilles heels of the deck is that we can get to that situation where you've just got a God roll to deal with, and that's the Achilles heel of any deck, you could say. But in a deck that's got so much mitigation, generally we want to stay on top of the dice that are being rolled out. So they roll a Stormtrooper out and he rolls a 2 damage side. Like, generally we want to re-roll that there and then. We don't want to let something else happen and then Django roll out and actually they've got 4 dice that they could resolve. However, sometimes we're going to find ourselves in that situation, and that's when Dodge can become invaluable. Han, it happened to me last night in a game. Han rolled his 4 dice and he rolled 12 damage on 4 dice. Unfortunately, I didn't have my Dodge in hand, but at least it's in the deck, so that I increase my odds of being able to deal with those occasional plays, as they will happen. And of course, if you're playing a melee deck, you're going to chuck it for a much needed reroll, which occasionally, because remember, sometimes we are happy to just generally discard a card to get a nice big reroll, because this deck can get a lot of dice out. It gets a lot of upgrades. It can have, it's got 4 character dice and lots of upgrades. We don't really want to be always doing single die rerolls and it taking us a damage each time. So we're quite happy to be discarding a couple of cards at the end of a round to maximise that damage from these sisters, especially when a character death is imminent on our opponent's team. Now, these are some cards here that I'll just chuck out are possible inclusions. And I'd encourage you, maybe if you haven't got some of all of these cards, these are kind of ones that you could look to put in. I won't put all of these in one go, that would change the deck up considerably, but maybe if you're playing a meta that's got a lot of big character dice in, then isolations could go in quite nicely to get rid of your Vader dice and things like that. Mind Trick is one that I've, again, kind of like I just alluded to with the whole playing Dodge when your opponent God rolls. One of the difficulties in Destiny at the moment is trying to deal with a big batch of really powerful dice. And things like Disturbance in the Force and Scramble are just a bit rubbish. So Mind Trick is a really good card, and 2 resources is fine. This deck can get together that many quite comfortably, and so I would recommend this as a card you could absolutely play with. Now, I've got a copy of Block, just because again that's a meta call. I think you could include that maybe instead of the Dodge, maybe alongside the Dodge, depends what you tend to find you're playing up against, but normally I'd interchange that single slot with a Dodge or a Block. Flank, it's a great card. We got 3 dice, we got 3 characters, and most of the time we want to leave our characters till the end. So therefore flank seems like a really good option. I mean, I wouldn't say it's the wrong play to include it. It's a really good card. Now, I have left out the Power of the Force, and I've kind of linked it with Hidden in Shadow. There's some interesting things about this. I think this is a really interesting little slot that you could play around with. Hidden in Shadow is better than I can give it credence for. I often look at the 1 resource cost and go, it's a bit negative. But it ramps. It allows us to ramp. It allows me to play out a Force Choke next turn for 1 resource. Brilliant. Or play my Force Throw for 2. I haven't really considered that as being quite a useful aspect of Hidden in Shadow. Of course, it's given us action. It's given us shields. We love that in this deck. And I think if you do include Hidden in Shadow, I'd probably change it for the Hunker Down. And I think especially if we get more melee, or if you've got more melee in your local meta, I think Hidden in Shadow could be a better shout. And then I think Power of the Force becomes a real possibility. And Power of the Force, what I would use it for is to maximise things like your resources or your focus. This deck, as you play with it a few times, you'll suddenly realise, crikey, I'm getting a lot of upgrades out here. I tend to get quite spread damage, a little bit on a couple of the nightsisters, maybe from using their ability, but of course my opponent's really trying to go after Jabba. Now Jabba's probably got Holdout Blaster on him, but he can easily have the Sith Holocron on him, or the Sith Holocron, and a Mind Probe or Force Throw, something useful on there. So getting out 3 blue upgrades in this deck is really realistic. Getting out 4 is not, it would be fine, like it really would be. So I think in a deck we're going to see most of in a deck we're going to see most of it in a game. Power of the Force, I think, can be a really good include in this. Now the last 2 I've put in are Datapad, mainly because it gives us resources and we really like that, and of course that special is really good at helping us to get the specials on our Force Throw and on our Force Chokes, on our other cards which have got really good specials on, and of course it allows the Cunning play to go off, Cunning, Thermal Detonator, which I've got to go off as well, is devastating and brilliant when it works. So that can be a really nice chain. And Comlink's in there because I don't think Comlink is a very good card normally. But you put it in this deck, I mean, just look at those sides. We've got 2 focus. Love it. Nightsisters are going to get their damage off. We're going to get the modified sides on our damage upgrades, on our Mind Probes and things like that. But if we roll a shield, great, we get a free reroll and 2 resource sides. And we love resources in this deck. So I also think Comlink is not a bad shout in this deck. When you couple that with the fact that you've got, oh look, another load of reroll, it's brilliant. I mean, it really does fit our deck really well. And I think it's possibly a good example of a card that, well, in theory, because I haven't tested it more than 1 game, and I did use it and it was very useful in that 1 game, but I haven't used it in this current list as it stands. And the only reason it's there is because I think it could be a good replacement for another card if you haven't got one of the other cards in there. So if you're struggling to, I don't know, have a On the Hunt or something like that, maybe you could put a Comlink in. Those are the kind of little changes that you could include, and I think Comlink is actually a card that will really work in a deck like this, more so than in another decks in the meta. So there it is. There is Jabba and 2 Nightsisters, or the Shooting Sisters deck. Now what I'll do in another video is I'll do some gameplay with it, and what I'll do is I'll do a bit of a commentary on there so you can just hear some of the tactical decisions that I'm making and seeing it sort of in operation, as it were. Now, as ever, if you've got any questions or comments or anything you'd like to highlight or whatever, then please do leave them on the comment section of the video. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, well then you can through the Knights of Ren Discord channel. I'm Peace Lord on that. And if you haven't listened to the Knights of Ren podcast, guys, get listened to it. Fantastic bunch of guys, really know what they're talking about, and when it comes to deck building and lists and just great discussion around it, the Knights of Ren are definitely some of the best guys out there for that. So do check them out. I love their podcasts. So until the next Destiny video, in the meantime, keep enjoying Destiny.